My name is Augustine Wells, and I am 37 years old. The call from my sister after 10 years of silence caught me completely off guard. Jennifer informed me about the big family reunion to celebrate our parents' 40th wedding anniversary, but made it clear I was not invited. Little did they know, the luxurious beach house they had rented for the occasion was actually mine. I felt no anger, just a calm anticipation as I waited for the moment my family would discover the truth. If you are enjoying this story so far, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit that like button, and subscribe to hear how this unexpected reunion unfolded. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood on the north side of Chicago, in a family that valued appearance and achievement above all else. My father, Thomas Wells, was a pharmaceutical sales representative for a major company. He wore crisp suits, maintained a firm handshake, and expected nothing less than perfection from his children. My mother, Catherine, supported his ambitions completely, carefully cultivating our family image in the community. Our household operated like a well-oiled machine, with clear expectations for everyone. Jennifer, 2 years younger than me, was the golden daughter. She excelled in school, played violin beautifully, and always said the right things at family gatherings. Lucas, the youngest, quickly learned to adapt to our parents' expectations, choosing business courses in high school and mimicking our father in both speech and mannerisms. Then there was me, the black sheep. Not because I was rebellious or caused trouble, but because I dared to have my own dreams. While I maintained good grades, I was fascinated by technology rather than business. I spent hours taking apart and rebuilding computers in our basement, creating small programs and dreaming of innovations that could change the world. When college application time arrived, the tension that had been building for years finally erupted. My parents had mapped out my future: business school, followed by a position at a prestigious firm, then eventually taking over some of my father's client relationships. They had connections, recommendations lined up, and even a dormitory selected at Northwestern. I still remember my mother's face when I told them I had accepted an offer from MIT to study computer engineering. The disappointment quickly morphed into anger. My father slammed his hand on the dinner table. The plates jumped. "You are throwing away everything we've built for you, Augustine. This technology obsession is a waste of your potential." "But this is what I love," I argued. "This is what I am good at. Technology is the future." "The future," my father scoffed. "The future is in relationships, in business connections, in knowing the right people. Not sitting behind a screen all day." The argument ended with my parents' decision to cut financial support for my education. If I was determined to defy their plans, I would do it on my own. I accepted their challenge, moved to Massachusetts, and worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. Every semester was a struggle, every tuition payment a victory. During my senior year, I returned home for Christmas break. The atmosphere was tense but civil. My parents had accepted my choice, even if they didn't approve. Jennifer and Lucas walked on eggshells around me, as if my independence might be contagious. On the second night home, I was searching for aspirin in my father's bathroom cabinet when I found it the small, unmarked pill bottle. At first, I thought nothing of it. Many people in pharmaceuticals had sample medications. But something about the way it was hidden behind other bottles triggered my curiosity. I recognized the pills immediately. They were Nuravan, an experimental drug for Parkinson's disease that had been recalled due to serious side effects. My father was a sales representative for the very company that manufactured it. The bottle shouldn't have existed, much less be in our home months after the recall. That evening, after everyone had gone to bed, I confronted my father in his study. "Dad, I need to ask you something," I said, placing the bottle on his desk. His face drained of color. "Where did you get that?" "Your bathroom cabinet." "Why do you have recalled medication? Are you selling these to your clients?" His expression shifted from shock to anger. "This is none of your business, Augustine. You don't understand how this industry works." "I understand ethics," I replied. I understand that people could get hurt. My father stood up, his voice low but intense. You have no idea about the real world. Those medications help people who have no other options. The recall was a political decision, not a medical one. The argument escalated quickly. I threatened to report him to the company. He accused me of betrayal, of trying to ruin him after all he'd sacrificed. Words were said that could never be taken back, culminating in my father standing at the front door at midnight, pointing outside. Get out, he said. If you can't be loyal to your own family, you are no longer my son. I packed a bag and spent the remainder of my break in a cheap motel, using what little savings I had left. When I returned to MIT, I had no family to call, no home to return to. That pill bottle had changed everything. I graduated from MIT with honors, but there was no family cheering as I walked across the stage. I scanned the audience out of habit, a small part of me hoping they might have come as a surprise. The seats where they should have been remained empty. My roommate Jake and his parents took me out to dinner afterward, a kind gesture that made the absence of my own family both more bearable and more painful. Despite everything, I had managed to land a position at a small tech startup in San Francisco. The salary wasn't impressive, but the opportunity was exactly what I wanted: hands-on experience developing new security software in a growing field. I packed everything I owned into 2 suitcases and flew west, determined to start fresh. Those first months in San Francisco were lean. I shared a 2-bedroom apartment with 3 other guys, each of us claiming a corner of space in the cramped quarters. I slept on a futon in what was technically the dining area, separated from the living room by a second-hand bookshelf. My portion of the rent consumed nearly half my monthly salary, leaving little for anything beyond basic necessities. Yet despite these challenges, I found a freedom in California that I had never known in Chicago. No expectations to meet except my own. No disapproving glances when I spent weekends coding instead of networking. For the first time, I could fully immerse myself in the work I loved without apology. Still, the absence of my family left a hollow space that no amount of professional satisfaction could fill. That first Thanksgiving, I worked through the holiday rather than face an empty apartment. For Christmas, I gathered my courage and sent cards to each family member, along with small gifts I could barely afford. I included a note with my new address and phone number. 2 weeks later, all the packages were returned unopened. I tried again for birthdays. My mother's gift was returned with "return to sender" scrawled across the box in my father's handwriting. Jennifer and Lucas never responded at all. I called the house number repeatedly, but no one ever picked up. After a year of attempts, I left a final voicemail. "I'm still here," I said. "I'm still your son, your brother. When you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting." The silence was deafening. The pain grew sharper when I discovered through social media that Lucas had graduated from Northwestern Business School. Photos showed my parents beaming proudly beside him, Jennifer standing nearby with her boyfriend. They looked happy, complete. I had been so thoroughly removed from their lives that there wasn't even an empty space where I should have been. At work, I found an unexpected mentor in David Harrington, one of the company's early investors. In his 60s with salt and pepper hair and a calm demeanor, David took an interest in my work and began inviting me to lunch regularly. During one of these meals, after Id had won too many glasses of wine, I confessed the situation with my family. Instead of the pity I expected, David offered perspective. "Sometimes the family you build is more important than the family you're born into," he told me. His words stayed with me, a small comfort during holidays and milestones spent alone. David also saw potential in me beyond my technical skills. He began teaching me about investment strategies, business development, and how to leverage my knowledge of security systems into profitable partnerships. Under his guidance, I expanded my role at the company, becoming a crucial bridge between the development team and our business clients. In my 5th year away from home, I made one final attempt at reconciliation. My father's 60th birthday was approaching, and I sent a carefully written letter expressing my desire to move forward, to find some way to be a family again. I enclosed plane tickets to San Francisco for my parents, an invitation to see the life I had built. 3 days later, the letter and tickets arrived back in my mailbox, torn in half. The message was clear. As far as they were concerned, I no longer existed. That night, I finally accepted the reality of my situation. The family I had been born into had made their choice, and no amount of success or personal growth would change their minds. It was time to stop letting the absence define me and focus completely on building a life that fulfilled me. I removed all my family members from social media, deleted their contact information, and packed away the few childhood photos I had brought with me. Not in anger, but as an acknowledgement that this chapter of my life needed to close so another could begin. The small startup where I worked was gaining traction in the tech industry. What had begun as a team of 6 passionate developers, working out of a converted warehouse space, had grown to 30 employees with actual offices in downtown San Francisco. Our security software was becoming recognized as an innovative solution for businesses concerned about data protection. By my 29th birthday, I had been promoted to Deputy Chief Technology Officer, leading a team of developers working on our flagship product. The hours were long, often stretching well past midnight, but the work was fulfilling in a way I had always hoped my career would be. Every problem solved was a personal victory, every new client a validation of the path I had chosen against my parents' wishes. My breakthrough came unexpectedly during a 3-day coding marathon. We were facing a persistent vulnerability in our system that larger competitors had also struggled to solve. Something clicked for me at about 2 in the morning after endless cups of coffee. I developed an encryption algorithm that addressed the weakness in a way that was both elegant and virtually impenetrable. The solution catapulted our company into the spotlight. Major corporations that had previously dismissed us began calling, eager to implement our security protocol. Within months, industry giants were exploring partnership opportunities or acquisition talks. I found myself in boardrooms presenting to executives 3 times my age, explaining complex security concepts in terms that made their value clear. During a technology conference in New York, I met Sarah Levinson. She was presenting her work on user interface design, demonstrating how aesthetics and security could complement rather than compete with each other. Her presentation was brilliant, challenging many of the assumptions I had held about how security features should be implemented. I introduced myself afterward, intending to discuss potential collaborations for our companies. What began as a professional conversation over coffee extended into dinner, then drinks, then a walk through Manhattan until 4 in the morning. Sarah was not only professionally brilliant, but personally captivating, intelligent, warm, and surprisingly funny for someone in a field often dominated by serious personalities. What struck me most about Sarah was how attentively she listened. When I eventually shared the story of my family estrangement, she didn't offer empty platitudes or awkward sympathy. Instead, she asked thoughtful questions and shared her own complicated relationship with her parents' expectations. There was an understanding between us, a recognition of what it meant to choose authenticity over conformity. Our long-distance relationship developed over video calls, weekend visits, and collaboration on projects that allowed us to merge our professional expertise. 6 months after we met, Sarah relocated to San Francisco to take a position with a design firm that often partnered with tech companies like mine. Around the same time, our startup received an acquisition offer that stunned everyone. A major tech corporation wanted our security protocol and was willing to pay millions for it. As one of the key developers, and now a significant shareholder, my portion of the deal was substantial more money than I had ever imagined possessing. Suddenly, at 31, I was financially independent in a way that seemed unreal. The acquisition allowed me to step back from daily operations, though I stayed on as a consultant to ensure a smooth transition. With time and resources at my disposal, I began considering what I truly wanted from life beyond professional success. Sarah and I married in an intimate ceremony at a small vineyard north of the city. We invited only our closest friends and Sarah's immediate family. David Harrington, my mentor who had become like a father figure, walked Sarah down the aisle at her request. The day was perfect in its simplicity, yet I couldn't help noticing the empty spaces where my family should have been. Despite all the positive changes, I still felt the absence during significant moments. When Sarah and I bought our first home together, there was no father to help us move furniture or mother to offer decorating advice. When we celebrated achievements, the phone calls and congratulations came only from friends and colleagues, never from those who had known me longest. Then came the unexpected discovery. During a vacation to Cape Cod, Massachusetts, we ventured into a small coastal town I vaguely remembered visiting once as a child. The memory was one of the few positive ones from my early years, my father in a rare relaxed mood, teaching me to fly a kite on the beach while my mother took photos. It was before expectations had created the chasm between us, before I had become a disappointment. As we drove along the shore, I spotted a for sale sign in front of a large, weathered beach house perched on a dune overlooking the Atlantic. Something about the property called to me. The blue-gray shingles, the wraparound porch, the private path leading down to the beach, it seemed like a physical manifestation of the peace I had been seeking. We stopped to look, and within minutes of walking through the front door, I knew. This place, with its open spaces and endless ocean views, represented everything my life in Chicago had lacked: freedom, possibility, authenticity. The house needed significant renovation, but I could see what it could become. We purchased the property that week, and I threw myself into its restoration with unexpected passion. Over the next 3 years, we transformed it room by room, preserving its historic character while adding modern comforts. I learned to sand floors, restore woodwork, even replace windows, all tasks my father would have hired others to do. The beach house became more than a vacation property. It became a symbol of the life I had built for myself, the choices I had made despite disapproval. As we added personal touches, art collected during our travels, furniture we had chosen together, a home office overlooking the ocean, I realized I was creating the home I had always wanted. A place defined by acceptance rather than expectation. What I didn't realize then was how this sanctuary would become the unlikely stage for a family reunion I never expected. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Sarah and I split our time between our San Francisco apartment and the Cape Cod beach house, working remotely when possible and cherishing the contrast between city energy and coastal tranquility. I continued consulting with tech companies on security implementations, while Sarah had launched her own design firm specializing in user experience. We were discussing plans for the upcoming summer, debating whether to spend the entire season at the beach house, when my phone rang with an unfamiliar number bearing a Chicago area code. I nearly declined the call, assuming it was a telemarketer, but something compelled me to answer. "Hello," I answered cautiously. The voice that responded sent a shock through my system. "Augustine, it's Jennifer." 10 years of silence collapsed into a single moment. My sister, now 35, sounded both familiar and like a stranger. My hands began to shake so severely that I had to put the phone on speaker and set it down. "Jennifer," I finally managed. "I can't believe it's you." "I know," she said, her voice tight with what might have been nervousness or emotion. "It's been a long time." The understatement hung between us. A long time. A decade of birthdays, holidays, achievements, disappointments, all experienced separately, as if we existed in parallel universes. "Is everything okay?" I asked, assuming only a crisis could have broken the silence. "Yes, everything is fine," she assured me quickly. "Actually, that's why I am calling. Mom and Dad are celebrating their 40th wedding anniversary next month, and we're planning a big family reunion at the Cape." My heart leapt. After all this time, could this be the olive branch I'd stopped hoping for? I caught Sarah's eye across the room, and she moved closer, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder. "That sounds wonderful," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "When exactly is it?" "The weekend of June 10th through 17th, Jennifer replied. We're renting this amazing beach house. Lucas and his fiancée will be there, and I am bringing my husband and kids. I was already mentally rearranging consultations and commitments. You have kids? I asked, the reality of how much I'd missed suddenly hitting me. 2. Bradley is 7 and Emma is 5, she said, her voice softening. They would love to meet their uncle. The word uncle sent another wave of emotion through me. I had been an uncle for 7 years without knowing it. I'd love to be there, I told her. Just send me the details, and Sarah and I will make arrangements. The silence that followed lasted several seconds too long. Augustine, she finally said, her voice now barely audible. This is really difficult for me to say, but I don't think Mom and Dad want you to come. The hope that had been building crashed so abruptly it left me breathless. 10 years and nothing had changed. I see was all I could manage. I'm so sorry, Jennifer continued, words tumbling out quickly now. I wanted to invite you. Lucas did too. We talk about you, you know. We're Facebook friends with some of your college friends, so we know a little about your life. But Mom and Dad, they still want to discuss you. When I suggested inviting you to the reunion, Dad shut down completely, and Mom started crying. I should have pushed harder, I know, but I cut her off, unable to bear the familiar excuses. It's fine, Jennifer. I understand. But Sarah, who had been listening to the entire exchange, clearly didn't understand. She gently took the phone from me. Jennifer, this is Sarah, Augustine's wife, she said, her voice calm but firm. I think after 10 years, your parents might reconsider their position. This could be an opportunity for healing. I am sorry, Jennifer replied. I wish things were different. I really do. But they made it clear that this reunion is only for what they consider family. The words stung more than they should have after all this time. Only for family. The implication being that I was no longer included in that category. Sarah handed the phone back to me, her expression a mix of outrage and sadness on my behalf. Where exactly on the Cape is this reunion happening? I asked, more for something to say than out of actual interest. Jennifer gave me the address, adding that it was a gorgeous property with direct beach access and enough bedrooms for everyone. I just wished you could see it, she added, as if that would somehow soften the exclusion. After exchanging a few more awkward pleasantries, we ended the call with vague promises to stay in touch, promises we both knew were unlikely to be kept. I sat in stunned silence for several minutes after hanging up. Sarah wrapped her arms around me but said nothing, allowing me space to process what had just happened. 10 years, I finally said. 10 years, and they still can't even be in the same room with me. I opened my laptop, more out of habit than any clear purpose. Almost unconsciously, I entered the address Jennifer had given me into the search bar. When the results loaded, I stared in disbelief at the screen. Sarah, I said, my voice suddenly strange to my own ears. That's our house. What? She leaned forward to look at the screen. The address. It's our beach house in Cape Cod. They're renting our house for the family reunion. Sarah's eyes widened. That can't be right. Are you sure? I navigated to the property management company's website. We had listed the beach house for short-term rentals during periods when we knew we wouldn't be using it, working with a local company that handled the logistics. There it was a reservation for the Wells family, June 10th through 17th. How is this possible? Sarah asked. Wouldn't the management company have noticed the same last name? We use your maiden name on the property listings, I reminded her. For privacy, the house is legally owned by Augustine and Sarah Bennett. The irony of the situation was almost too perfect to be believed. My family, who had shut me out completely, had unknowingly chosen my home as the setting for their celebration. What are you going to do? Sarah asked. Cancel the reservation. I considered it briefly. It would be within my rights. I could contact the management company right now, cite a personal emergency, and force my family to find alternate accommodations at the last minute. A decade of hurt and rejection certainly justified such an action. But as the initial shock faded, a different idea began to form. "No," I said slowly. "I am not going to cancel. So y'all just let them stay there, not knowing it's your house." Sarah looked confused. I looked at her, a plan taking shape in my mind. "Actually, I am thinking maybe we should be there to greet them when they arrive." The decision to confront my family, after 10 years of separation, wasn't made lightly. Sarah and I spent days discussing the potential outcomes, weighing the emotional risks against the possibility of resolution. There were moments when I nearly abandoned the plan entirely, convinced that reopening old wounds would only create new ones. But ultimately, I realized this unexpected intersection of our lives might be the only opportunity I would ever have to face my family on my own terms. Not as the disappointed son begging for acceptance, but as the man I had become, a man who had built a successful life according to his own values. We flew to Boston 2 weeks before my family was scheduled to arrive and drove the familiar route to Cape Cod. The beach house stood exactly as we had left it months earlier, though the property management company had maintained the grounds beautifully. Walking through the rooms, I saw them now through new eyes, imagining how my family would experience the space. The upcoming confrontation gave me a different perspective on what we had created here. Each room contained evidence of the life Sarah and I had built together, evidence I had never planned to share with my family. Photos from our travels adorned the walls. Books reflecting our interests filled the shelves. Even the furniture we had carefully selected revealed our tastes and priorities. I spent the next day arranging things, not to hide who I was, but to ensure my story was properly told. I placed my MIT diploma in the study, alongside awards I had received for my work in security technology. I made sure family photos were visible, not the childhood ones I had long ago packed away, but newer images. Sarah and me on our wedding day. The two of us with David Harrington at industry events. Groups of friends who had become our chosen family over the years. If my parents were finally going to see my life, they would see all of it: the success, the happiness, and most importantly, the authenticity that had cost me their approval. Sarah watched me with concern as I moved restlessly from room to room, adjusting and readjusting things that didn't need changing. "You don't have to prove anything to them, you know," she said gently. "I'm not trying to prove anything," I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. "I'm just making sure they see who I really am, not who they think I am." The next day, we contacted Angela Rivera, the local property manager who handled the beach house rentals. We asked her to meet us for coffee at a small cafe in town. Angela was understandably confused when we explained the situation. I could see her mentally reviewing the company's policies, trying to determine if she'd made some sort of professional error. "So the family renting your property next week is actually your family," she clarified. "But they don't know you're the owner." "That's correct," I confirmed. "It's a complicated situation. We haven't spoken in 10 years. Angela set her coffee cup down carefully. "Mr. Bennett, if you want to cancel the reservation, we can certainly do that. Though at this late date, there's a cancellation fee and—" "No cancellations," I assured her. "We want them to stay. We just need your discretion in handling the situation." We explained our plan. Sarah and I would be present when my family arrived. Angela would greet them normally, complete the check-in process, and then introduce us as the owners who happened to be in town checking on some renovations. Angela looked uncomfortable. "I am not sure about participating in this kind of confrontation," she said diplomatically. "I understand your concern," I told her. "But this isn't about creating a scene. It's about finally addressing a family situation that has gone unresolved for too long. The house is our property, and we have every right to be there." After further discussion and reassurance that we wouldn't involve her company in any family drama, Angela reluctantly agreed to our plan. She would arrive at the standard check-in time of 3 o'clock, and we would join her shortly thereafter. As the day of their arrival approached, my anxiety intensified. I had trouble sleeping, waking from dreams where my father slammed doors in my face or my mother looked through me as if I were invisible. Sarah found me at 2 in the morning sitting on the deck, staring at the dark ocean. "What if this is a mistake?" I asked as she wrapped a blanket around my shoulders. "What if it just makes everything worse? How could it be worse than 10 years of silence?" She asked reasonably. They could reject me again, but this time to my face. I could see the indifference in their eyes. Sarah sat beside me, taking my hand in hers. "Then at least y'all know. Y'all know it wasn't something you could have fixed with one more call or one more letter. Y'all know you did everything possible." The morning my family was scheduled to arrive dawned clear and beautiful, the kind of perfect June day that had attracted us to Cape Cod in the first place. I stood on the balcony outside our bedroom, watching sunlight glitter across the water, trying to prepare myself mentally for what was to come. Sarah joined me, dressed casually but carefully in clothes that projected calm confidence. Looking at her, drawing strength from her presence, I felt a surge of gratitude for this life we had created together. Whatever happened today, I had her, our home, our work, our friends. I had built a life that fulfilled me. This wasn't about convincing my parents they had been wrong, I realized. It was about showing myself how far I had come, how completely I had moved beyond needing their approval. We ate a light lunch, though neither of us had much appetite. At 2:30, we saw Angela's car pull into the driveway. She would prepare the house for the official check-in, making sure everything was perfect for the guests who had no idea what awaited them. At 10 minutes before 3, we heard another vehicle approaching, a large SUV with rental car plates. From our position on the side deck, partially obscured by the house's design, we could see my family emerging from the vehicle. My father, now 70, his hair completely white but his posture still rigid and commanding. My mother, her face more lined than I remembered but still carefully made up. Jennifer, now a woman in her mid-30s, herding 2 children I had never met. A man who must be her husband, unloading luggage from the trunk. Lucas, looking startlingly like a younger version of our father, helping a petite woman with short dark hair, my brother's fiancée, I assumed. They gathered in front of the house, faces upturned in appreciation of its beauty, completely unaware that they were standing in front of a home I had lovingly restored with my own hands. The home of the son they had disowned. I took a deep breath, squeezed Sarah's hand once for courage, and stepped forward to greet the family I had lost 10 years ago. I watched from the side deck as Angela greeted my family, her professional smile revealing nothing of the unusual situation. She led them toward the front entrance, providing the standard overview of the property features. My father nodded approvingly at each luxury amenity mentioned, while my mother commented on the beautiful landscaping. The 2 children, my niece and nephew, I reminded myself, darted ahead excitedly, eager to explore. Jennifer called after them to be careful, her voice carrying clearly in the coastal air. It was strange hearing her speak as a mother, this sister who had been barely out of college when I last saw her. Sarah and I had agreed to wait until the family was inside before making our appearance. We moved quietly around the exterior of the house, positioning ourselves near the front door. Through the large windows, I could see them touring the open-concept living area, Angela pointing out features and my mother already rearranging decorative pillows to her preference. The moment had arrived. Sarah squeezed my hand one last time as Angela caught sight of us through the window. Right on cue, she opened the front door. "Mr. and Mrs. Wells, I believe the owners are here if you'd like to meet them," she announced. They were checking on some recent renovations and thought they might say hello. My father turned, the polite smile already forming on his face before he registered who stood in the doorway. That smile froze, then collapsed entirely as recognition dawned. My mother, who had been examining the kitchen cabinetry, turned to follow his gaze. The water glass she had been holding slipped from her fingers, shattering on the hardwood floor. "Augustine," she whispered, her face draining of color. The room fell into complete silence. Jennifer stood with one hand pressed to her mouth, while Lucas seemed rooted to the spot, his eyes darting between me and our father. The children, sensing the sudden tension, moved closer to their parents. I stepped forward, forcing myself to appear calmer than I felt. "Hello, everyone." Welcome to our home. My father recovered first, his shock transforming rapidly into the familiar anger I remembered from our last encounter. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. What are you doing here? I own this house, I replied simply. Sarah and I bought it 3 years ago. His eyes narrowed in suspicion. I don't believe you. This is some kind of trick. In response, I withdrew the property deed from my pocket and held it out. Augustine and Sarah Bennett, legal owners of the property at 437 Ocean View Drive. Sarah uses her maiden name professionally, which is probably why the connection wasn't made when you booked the rental. My mother had moved to my father's side, her hand gripping his arm for support. She looked older than her years in that moment, fragile in a way I had never seen her. You knew we were coming, she said. Jennifer told you about the reunion. Yes, I acknowledged. Jennifer called me. She said I wasn't welcome at the family gathering, but apparently my house is. Jennifer flinched at this, her face flushing with shame. Augustine, I didn't know. How could I have known? The children were staring at me with undisguised curiosity. The boy tugged at Jennifer's sleeve. Mom, who is that? He asked in a loud whisper. She placed her hands on his shoulders. That's your uncle Augustine. My brother. My nephew Bradley studied me with the unfiltered interest of childhood. You never told me I had another uncle. My father interrupted before Jennifer could respond. We should leave, he announced firmly. Catherine, tell the children to get their things. Lucas, help with the luggage. Wait, my mother said, surprising everyone. We can't just leave. Where would we go? Everything in town will be booked for the summer season. That's hardly my concern, my father retorted, though uncertainty had crept into his voice. He turned back to me. I assume you planned this whole thing to humiliate us. To ruin our anniversary. The accusation was so typically my father defensive, assuming the worst intentions, assuming that my actions, like his, must always revolve around him. Actually, I had no idea you were renting this house until Jennifer told me the address, I explained calmly. This was just an extraordinary coincidence. But once I knew, yes, I decided to be here. To what end? He demanded. Sarah, who had remained quietly supportive at my side, chose this moment to step forward. Mr. Wells, Mrs. Wells, I said simply, extending her hand. I am Sarah, Augustine's wife. We're not here to cause a scene or ruin anything. This house has plenty of room for everyone. My mother stared at Sarah as if she were an apparition. You're married? She asked me, her voice faint with surprise. For 5 years now, I confirmed. The realization seemed to hit her, then the magnitude of all she had missed. Her hand moved unconsciously to her heart. 5 years. And we didn't know. We weren't there. By choice, I reminded her gently. My father, however, remained unmoved. He stepped forward, physically placing himself between my mother and me in a gesture of protection or perhaps control. This is completely inappropriate, he declared. You abandoned this family years ago, and now you appear out of nowhere to disrupt our gathering. It's typical of your selfishness. I abandoned the family. I repeated, working to keep my voice level. I was thrown out of the house at midnight. I've sent letters, gifts, called for years with no response. You returned everything I sent. You tore up plane tickets I purchased so you could visit. And I am the one who abandoned the family. The stark recounting of facts hung in the air. Jennifer and Lucas exchanged uncomfortable glances, while my parents seemed temporarily at a loss for words. Into this tense silence, my nephew spoke again with the devastating directness of children. Grandpa, did you really make Uncle Augustine go away? My father's face reddened. It's complicated, Bradley. Adult matters that happened before you were born. Sarah cleared her throat softly. Perhaps we could all sit down. It's been a long day of travel for everyone, and standing in the entryway isn't comfortable for anyone. Her practical suggestion broke the immediate standoff. Angela, who had been hovering anxiously nearby, seized the opportunity. "I can come back tomorrow to finish the check-in," she offered. "Or perhaps you would all like some time to discuss things privately." I thanked her and assured her we could handle the situation. Once she had departed, an awkward silence descended again. "Here's what I propose," I finally said. "This house has 6 bedrooms, more than enough space for everyone. You can stay as planned. Sarah and I will remain in the master suite, but we won't interfere with your reunion. You can even pretend we're not here if that's easier." My mother looked torn, while my father maintained his stony expression. It was Lucas who finally spoke up. "I think we should stay," he said, addressing our parents but looking at me. "We've come all this way, and maybe this is some kind of sign that it's time to talk." I was surprised by his intervention. The last time I had seen Lucas, he had been a college sophomore, carefully echoing our father's opinions on every subject. Now he stood his ground, meeting my father's disapproving gaze without flinching. Jennifer added her support. "Lucas is right, Dad. It's been 10 years. Maybe we should at least listen to what Augustine has to say." My father looked between his remaining children, perhaps realizing for the first time that his absolute authority had limits. His jaw worked as he considered his options. Fine, he eventually conceded. "Well, stay. But this changes nothing, Augustine. You're still not part of this reunion." My mother flinched at his harshness, but said nothing to contradict him. "Understood," I replied, keeping my expression neutral despite the familiar sting of rejection. "As I said, consider Sarah and me invisible. We're only here because it's our home." I caught my father's slight wince at my emphasis on ownership. For a man who had built his identity around providing for his family, the revelation that his disowned son owned this luxurious property clearly struck a nerve. Sarah took control of the awkward moment with remarkable grace. "Let me show you all to your rooms," she offered. "We have the east wing set up for the children, with bunk beds and a play area. And the guest suites have wonderful views of the sunrise over the ocean." As Sarah led them upstairs, I remained in the living room, processing what had just occurred. My family was under my roof for the first time in a decade. They were here not by choice, but by an extraordinary twist of fate that even the most imaginative novelist might reject as too convenient. Yet beneath the obvious tension, I had glimpsed something unexpected. Cracks in the united front that had once stood against me. Lucas showing independence. Jennifer acknowledging my existence to her children. Even my mother, momentarily allowing herself to register the loss of 5 years of my life. These small openings might not lead to the Hollywood reconciliation scene of tearful embraces and complete forgiveness. But they suggested that the absolute exile of the past decade might not be as permanent or as unanimous as I had believed. I moved to the kitchen to prepare coffee and tea, knowing that hospitality might ease the next difficult conversations. Through the windows, I could see the ocean stretching toward the horizon, constant and unchanging despite the human drama unfolding before it. Whatever happened in the coming days, I had already accomplished something important. I had faced my family not as the desperate, rejected son, but as the man I had become on my own terms. I had shown them without words that their absence had not defined or defeated me. And for the first time in 10 years, I felt not the ache of what I had lost, but the quiet strength of what I had found. The first evening under one roof was painfully awkward. My family retreated to their assigned rooms almost immediately after the initial confrontation, emerging only briefly for the dinner Sarah had thoughtfully arranged to be delivered from a local restaurant. Conversation around the dining table was minimal and stilted, limited to requests to pass dishes and compliments about the food. My father maintained a rigid silence toward me, while my mother cast occasional glances in my direction when she thought I wouldn't notice. Jennifer made nervous attempts at including me in conversation, asking superficial questions about San Francisco and how Long Wed owned the beach house. Lucas observed everything with thoughtful intensity, speaking little but missing nothing. The children, unaware of the complex history hanging in the air, provided the only natural moments. Emma, my 5-year-old niece, decided I was fascinating primarily because I was new and unknown. She peppered me with questions about my favorite color, blue, whether I liked dinosaurs, yes, and if I knew how to build sand castles, absolutely. When I mentioned that there was a closet full of beach toys on the deck, including sand castle molds and buckets, she declared that we would have a castle building contest the next day. Her innocent inclusion pierced something in my chest, a tender spot I hadn't realized still existed. Later that night, after everyone had retired to their rooms, Sarah and I sat on our private balcony overlooking the moonlit ocean. That went better than expected, she offered, her optimism one of the countless reasons I loved her. I chuckled softly. If by better than expected you mean no one stormed out or threw anything, then yes, I suppose it did. She took my hand. Your father is exactly as you described. But your mother, I think there's something there, Augustine. She looks at you when you aren't watching. There's regret in her eyes. I wanted to believe her, but hope had proven dangerous over the years. Too many disappointments had taught me caution. The real test will be tomorrow, I said. Once the shock wears off. Morning came with the scent of coffee and the sound of small feet running down hallways. I found my niece and nephew already in the kitchen, helping Sarah make pancakes. Emma threw her arms around my waist the moment I appeared, declaring that it was beach day and we had castles to build. My family emerged gradually from their rooms, drawn by the smell of breakfast and the children's laughter. The atmosphere was tense, but less overtly hostile than the previous evening. We ate in shifts, my parents notably timing their appearance to avoid sitting with me. By mid-morning, everyone had migrated to the beach. Sarah and I set up our chairs at a deliberate distance, giving the family space while remaining visible. I pretended to read while watching them from behind sunglasses, my mother arranging herself carefully on a lounger. My father pacing along the shoreline with Lucas in what appeared to be serious conversation, Jennifer helping the children with their swimsuit. Emma had not forgotten her castle-building plans. She broke away from her mother and ran directly to me, insisting it was time for our contest. Caught between her enthusiasm and the complex adult dynamics, I glanced toward Jennifer, seeking permission. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. What followed was an hour of surprisingly joyful engineering, as Emma, Bradley, and I constructed an elaborate sand fortress complete with moat, walls, and towers. The children chattered freely, accepting my presence without question in the way only the very young can after the initial surprise has passed. I noticed my mother watching us, her expression unreadable behind large sunglasses. When Emma proudly called her over to judge our creation, she rose slowly and approached, maintaining a careful distance from me while admiring the children's work. This reminds me of the castles you used to build, Augustine, she said softly, addressing me directly for the first time. You were always so particular about the towers. They had to be perfectly symmetrical. The casual observation, the acknowledgement of a shared past, hit me with unexpected force. I remember was all I could manage in response. Bradley looked between us with interest. Did you play with my mom and Uncle Lucas at the beach when you were little? Yes, my mother answered before I could. We used to come to Cape Cod every summer when your mother and her brothers were children. Brothers plural. A simple word that acknowledged my place in the family history, even if not in its present. Later that afternoon, as everyone returned to the house to clean up before dinner, I found my mother alone in the kitchen, staring out at the ocean. I could have retreated, maintained the careful distance we had established, but something compelled me to approach. It's a beautiful view, I said, stopping several feet away from her. She nodded without turning. You chose well. This house, it suits you somehow. Thank you, I replied, surprised by the personal nature of the observation. She finally faced me, her eyes red rimmed above a brittle smile. 10 years is a long time, Augustine. Too long. I waited, uncertain where she was heading with this. I should have called you, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Many times I picked up the phone. I even dialed your number once, but I hung up when it started ringing. Why? I asked simply. She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring nervously. Your father, he was so hurt by what happened. He felt betrayed. And I thought I had to choose. I thought supporting him meant I couldn't also love you. The admission hung between us, imperfect but honest. Not quite an apology, but an acknowledgement of wrongdoing. I know about loyalty, I told her. But a parent's love shouldn't be conditional. No, she agreed, tears forming in her eyes. It shouldn't be. The moment was interrupted by my father entering the kitchen, stopping abruptly when he saw us together. His expression hardened immediately. Catherine, he said sharply, I was looking for you. Thomas, she began, wiping quickly at her eyes. I need your help with something upstairs, he interrupted, deliberately not looking at me. She hesitated, glancing between us with clear conflict on her face. Then, with a small sigh of resignation, she followed him out of the kitchen. The pattern continued through the second day. Small openings, tentative connections, followed by my father's intervention and reassertion of the old boundaries. Yet with each cycle, I noticed his authority seemed less absolute. Jennifer and Lucas exchanged glances when he made particularly harsh pronouncements. My mother grew slightly bolder in her brief interactions with me. The decisive moment came unexpectedly during dinner on the third evening. Sarah had prepared her specialty, grilled salmon with roasted vegetables, and for once everyone was seated at the table together, the children creating a buffer that made the arrangement tolerable for my father. The meal progressed with minimal conversation until Bradley, curious as ever, asked the question the adults had been carefully avoiding. Why did Uncle Augustine go away for so long? He asked, looking directly at my father. Was he in trouble? The table fell silent. My father set down his fork deliberately, clearly considering how to respond to his grandson without losing face. Sometimes adults disagree about important things, he began carefully. Your uncle made choices that the rest of the family didn't agree with. I had remained silent through many similar characterizations over the past days, but something about this simplified version of events, something about the way it would shape these children's understanding of conflict resolution, finally prompted me to speak. Actually, Bradley, I said gently, I found something that suggested your grandfather might have done something wrong at his job. When I asked him about it, he got very angry instead of explaining. We argued, and afterward, he told me I wasn't part of the family anymore. My father slammed his hand on the table, making the glasses jump. That's not what happened. Isn't it? I challenged, keeping my voice calm. You were distributing recalled medication, Dad. Medication that could have harmed people. When I questioned the ethics of that decision, you threw me out of the house. The accusation hung in the air. Jennifer and Lucas stared at our father in shock, clearly hearing this version of events for the first time. Is that true, Dad? Jennifer asked. You were selling recalled drugs. My father looked trapped, his gaze darting around the table as he realized he had lost control of the narrative. It wasn't that simple, he finally said. The recall was an overreaction. The side effects were minimal, and people needed those medications. The company was just covering itself legally. So it is true, Lucas said quietly. You were distributing medication that had been officially recalled. And when Augustine questioned you about it, you disowned him. I was protecting our family, my father insisted. Augustine threatened to report me. He would have destroyed everything I built for all of you. The revelation shifted the energy at the table perceptibly. For the first time, my siblings were seeing the event that had fractured our family from a different perspective. My mother, who had remained silent until now, surprised everyone by speaking up. We should have listened to you, Augustine, she said, her voice trembling. I knew about the medication. I didn't agree with what your father was doing, but I was afraid of losing everything. She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. I am so sorry. 10 years sorry. The gesture created a fissure in the dam that had held back a decade of emotion. I found myself fighting tears as I gently squeezed her hand in return. My father watched this exchange, his face cycling through anger, confusion, and finally a kind of defeated resignation. For 10 years, he had maintained his version of events, painting me as the disloyal son who had abandoned the family. Now that story was unraveling in front of everyone. When my mother withdrew her hand, Sarah quietly introduced a new topic, asking Jennifer about her children's school. The conversation gradually resumed, though with a different quality than before. Something fundamental had shifted. Later that evening, as Sarah and I prepared for bed, there was a knock at our door. I opened it to find Jennifer and Lucas standing in the hallway, looking uncertain. "Can we talk?" Jennifer asked. I invited them in, and for the next 2 hours, we began the painful, necessary process of reconstructing the past decade. They shared their perspective, how our father had controlled the narrative, how they'd been afraid to challenge him, how they'd missed me but grown accustomed to my absence. I told them about my struggles and successes, the life I'd built without them. It wasn't a perfect reconciliation. Too much time had passed, too many important moments had been missed. But it was a beginning, a tentative bridge across the chasm that had separated us for so long. The remaining days of the reunion unfolded with gradually decreasing tension. My father maintained a cool distance, but no longer actively prevented others from interacting with me. My mother sought me out for longer conversations, eager to learn about my life and to share stories of the family events I'd missed. Jennifer and Lucas introduced their partners properly, and I spent time getting to know my niece and nephew. On the final evening, as everyone packed for departure the next morning, my father found me alone on the deck. He stood awkwardly at the railing, staring out at the darkened ocean. "You did well for yourself," he said finally, not looking at me. "This house, your career. You proved me wrong." "It wasn't about proving you wrong, Dad," I replied. "It was about living authentically, being true to my own values." He nodded slightly, still avoiding eye contact. "That pill bottle," he said after a long silence. "I shouldn't have kept distributing the medication after the recall. My pride got in the way of my judgment. And then my pride kept me from admitting I was wrong all these years." It wasn't quite an apology, but from my father, it was extraordinary, a crack in the armor of certainty he'd worn for as long as I could remember. We stood in silence for several minutes, watching the waves roll onto the shore below. No dramatic reconciliation, no tearful embrace, but a small step toward something different than the complete estrangement of the past decade. The family departed the next morning with awkward hugs and tentative promises to stay in touch. I had no illusions that everything was fixed or that we would suddenly become a close-knit family again. 10 years of separation had created a distance that would take time and effort to bridge, if it could be bridged at all. But as Sarah and I stood on the porch, watching their cars disappear down the driveway, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a weight I'd carried for so long I had stopped noticing it. "Do you think you'll hear from them?" Sarah asked, leaning into my side. "Some of them," I answered honestly. "My mother, probably Jennifer. Maybe Lucas. My father, I don't know. But that's okay," I realized as I said it. I no longer needed their approval, or even their presence to feel complete. The family I'd chosen, my wife, my friends, my colleagues, they had sustained me through the years of absence. They had seen and valued me for who I truly was. The greatest gift of this unexpected reunion wasn't the partial reconciliation, welcome though it was. It was the final release from waiting for my family to change, to accept me, to love me unconditionally. I had built a life that fulfilled me, a home that reflected my values, relationships that nourished rather than diminished me. Standing there with Sarah, looking out at the ocean that would continue its eternal rhythm long after all our human dramas had played out, I understood the deepest lesson of the past 10 years. True freedom comes not from winning approval or argument, but from living authentically according to one's own compass, regardless of who witnesses or approves. I had spent years trying to fix what was broken in my family. Now I could see that the real healing had happened within me while I wasn't looking. "What are you thinking?" Sarah asked, noticing my expression. I smiled, pulling her closer. That sometimes home isn't a place or even people. Sometimes home is the peace you find within yourself. Have you ever experienced a moment of clarity that changed how you viewed a difficult relationship in your life? A moment when you realized your worth wasn't dependent on someone else's approval. Share your story in the comments below. And if this journey resonated with you, please like this video, subscribe to hear more stories of resilience and healing, and share with someone who might need to be reminded of their own strength today. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, the family you choose can be just as meaningful as the family you're born into.